Rosa Kim, and I teach at Suffolk University Law School in Boston, Massachusetts. And welcome to this video on an introduction to global lawyering and cross-cultural competency. In this video, I will introduce global lawyering and cross-cultural competency, which are foundational concepts for a course that focuses on comparative and international law. Lawyering in the 21st century is increasingly transnational and international, and human activity in general is less and less confined by national borders. Technological advances and the ease of travel, these have all contributed to an environment where human activity, again, is increasingly borderless, transnational, and international. So as lawyers, therefore, the ability to navigate this new system is increasingly important, and global legal skills, therefore, are becoming more and more critical. So what are global lawyering skills? It's difficult to have a definitive list, but if we think about the core skills needed to represent interests of clients, regardless of the jurisdiction in which you practice, the list would look something like this: legal research, writing, and that can be different forms of writing, from an objective memo to a piece of advocacy to drafting a contract. Certainly oral communication, whether it's simple presentation of an idea or advocacy before court. Legal analysis and synthesis, the ability to analyze a problem, to reach a solution. Counseling and interviewing clients, client relations of all kinds. Negotiating with partners, adversaries. In all of these skills and other activities that lawyers are engaged in, there are cross-cultural considerations that come into play when you are dealing with any of these players being of a different culture, whether it's the client, an adversary, a judge, a partner, whatever the case may be. So cross-cultural considerations are going to permeate all aspects of these core skills. There are some similarities among jurisdictions when it comes to these skills, but there are also many differences among them. So being mindful of the differences in particular is increasingly important. So we talk about this idea of competency, cross-cultural competency. Sometimes this is referred to as intercultural competency or simply cultural competency. What do we mean by this? And there are many definitions, but one that I will share with you, as you can see in the slide, is the effective management of interaction between people who represent different or divergent affective, cognitive, and behavioral orientations to the world in terms of nationality, race, ethnicity, tribe, religion, or region. Now, what's important here is that in order to achieve intercultural competence, you first have to understand your own cultural matrix, understand your own cultural makeup, the different contributing factors, and then recognize the differences. And then finally, and most importantly, be open to new experiences, open and tolerant to new and different cultures. So the cultural iceberg is a really useful image, one that was developed by Edward Hall in his iconic book, Beyond Culture. The idea that really when you observe the behaviors and practices of other people, what you're seeing is only the observable aspects. with the iceberg that is visible on top of the water. However, what you can't see is just how deeply that iceberg goes under the surface. And if you look at this image, what is under the surface, the things that are not observable, are a myriad of different factors, right? Including climate, geography, demographics, economics, perceptions, attitudes, beliefs and values, even media, education, ideologies, and religion. These factors can all work together to create a whole person. And what you can really see and observe of that person is literally the tip of the iceberg. So this image is incredibly powerful when you think about trying to understand someone of a different culture or a different legal system. Now, how does cross-cultural competency manifest as a lawyering skill exactly? It doesn't mean that you have to know everything about a different culture, or you have to somehow study everything and know all of the facts about that culture in advance. It would be impossible to do that. But what it means is that you are open and able to take in and learn the differences and navigate difference. So this idea of the ability to navigate difference is a really critical one, because again, it's not about learning facts or just ideas in advance. It means being open and understanding that differences matter and that there are different ways to navigate those differences. What kind of differences, cultural differences, can there be that would affect a lawyer's work? Well, Hall also explained this idea of high context versus low context cultures. And you may be familiar with this concept in terms of certain cultures where high context is prioritized. And it's characterized by interactions that are indirect, implicit, subtle, more layered, more nuanced. It's more what is unspoken that becomes very important. In contrast, you have low context cultures where a more straightforward, explicit, sort of literal approach is the preferred way to communicate. Sometimes people associate the high context culture more with Asian cultures, with some non-Western cultures, other non-Western cultures. Low context culture tends to be associated more with parts of Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, the common law system. Of course, these are big generalizations, but the point is that there are actual differences in the way people express themselves and communicate ideas that are extremely relevant in the legal context. So it's about sensitivity and awareness and openness to learn. Really, that is at the bottom of cultural competency. Now, within the U.S. context, cultural competency really takes on kind of a special and important, even more important meaning. So the U.S. population is increasingly multicultural. In fact, the U.S. Census has the population becoming minority white by the year 2045. That means that a client, a judge, and an adversary could easily be of a culture that is different from yours. And so domestic practice is not only diverse in terms of other members of the same community, but we see here from this 2009 study, and that's already quite a while ago, that the domestic practice of the law is becoming less purely domestic. So this survey in Philadelphia in 2009 that revealed that 67% of lawyers worked on a legal matter that involved international and or foreign law. It's a very high number. And again, it's likely to be even higher now. And so in recognition of the rising trend in a multicultural population, U.S. law schools are now including a requirement for the American Bar Association has now mandated this requirement that all U.S. law schools must teach bias, cross-cultural competency, and racism in their law school curriculum. It is true that this was in large part prompted by the racial unrest that occurred in the U.S. A couple of years ago in the early 2010s. In the early 2020s. However, this acknowledgement of the importance of cross-cultural competency for lawyering is really remarkable, and one that signals the fact that its cultural competency is really taking center stage when it comes to effective lawyering.